My talk is called Post-Mortem. What the hell happened? Okay, first I would like you to meet this person called Apimanyu Mishra. I heard him interviewed on the radio one day. He was being interviewed because he had become the youngest chess grandmaster at 12 years old. He had only been playing chess for 3 years and had taken to it so masterfully that he had beaten out adults and had become the youngest chess master, grandmaster in the country, I believe. And as he was being interviewed, the interviewer said, well, of course, you don't always win. So how do you deal with it when you lose? Is that really frustrating for you? And he said, well, I don't think of it as losing. I look at losses as lessons, because if I lose, that means I made a mistake. And if I made a mistake, there is a lesson there that I need to learn so that I don't make that mistake again. And that trick of reframing things is something that is a survival skill for the job search. So that when somebody says, what do you feel are your greatest weaknesses? And you say, I don't like to think about things as being weaknesses. I do have some areas that I'd like to improve, and I'd be happy to share those with you. Or we don't talk about problems anymore. That word is out of vogue. We talk about challenges. We're facing many challenges in our country right now. And so looking at things as lessons instead of failures, I think is a very smart thing to do. Oh, there we go. Okay. So meet JL. I took his picture off LinkedIn without his permission because I think he's retired by now. But I wanted to tell you, he was a job search member a long, long time ago, maybe even as long ago as during the dot-com bust or something like that. But all of a sudden, he seemed to be, things were turning around for him. And he had a wonderful opportunity in California. That was where the home office was. And our job club was smaller. I think we would usually have about 100 people at every meeting. And Jeff was he was just the greatest guy. He had been a general manager or regional manager for big restaurant chains. And he would often go to restaurants that were struggling, and he would re-energize the customer service and clean them up and change the policies and get them back to being productive again. So he was just a really enthusiastic person. And the people in Launchpad, we loved him. He was just the most likable guy. And when he said that he had this interview, he'd been interviewing, he had 3 already with this company, and they liked him, and they kept moving him up and moving him up in the process. And now he was going to be flown to California for the final interview. And we were so excited, the whole job club, because nothing was going on for anybody else. And so the whole job club was just energized by his success. And we were all living vicariously through him. And I think we even had a send-off party for him. And anyway, we were so excited. And he came back from that and said, it just sounded so positive. He said that the hiring manager said, what I see you in is a role as not only, this regional manager or whatever, but as a mentor to people, to the managers, young managers that have just started off in restaurant managing. And they really need somebody to show them the ropes and help them optimize the success of their organization. And you are the person that could do that. I mean, there was such great positive interaction between this guy and the hiring manager. And so he came back, and we were all just, waiting for the hiring party. And so the group, the whole Launchpad was invested in his success living through him. And the outcome was that they hired an internal candidate who had not even applied during the application time, but had come out of the woodwork and said, I want this job. And because of, I don't even know, internal connections or something, that person got that job. And so it wasn't only JL's reaction. Everybody in Job Club had the same horrendous reaction. So you do what the hell happened. And there are just three parts to postmortems of job interviews: what worked, what didn't work, and what was the lesson. So what worked, he was able to establish a very solid relationship with both the recruiter and with that hiring manager, who practically cried when she told him what had happened. He also, as one of the things he took to California, was he said, this might help you visualize me in this role. I've created a 30, 60, and 90-day plan as to what I would do if I'm selected for the position. And that's a ploy that, and I don't want to say ploy exactly, but that's a technique that's worked effectively for lots of people that are going into management roles, where they say, okay, based on what I know about the situation now, here are the things that I would try to initiate during the first month and the second month and the third month and so forth. Now, what didn't work was there was this internal political situation of which he had no indication whatsoever and no control over. Lots of times things happen and they're completely out of your control. So lessons. I don't know what that little video image I couldn't get rid of. So you always want to maintain your pipeline. You always want to have don't ever say, I believe I've got this job. All the buy signs are there, so I'm going to quit looking. No, never do that, because the devastation, the emotional roller coaster is just too extreme. Always be applying for jobs. Always have jobs in the pipeline. Always try to apply for, I don't know, 2 or 3 jobs every week. Try to always have something going on. You never know when even an offer is going to be withdrawn for a reason, some reason or not or other. So always, keep looking, keep playing the game. You can decrease the number of places that you apply to, but don't ever put all your eggs into one basket. We don't even count that you've been hired, as you may have heard, until you get your second paycheck. That's just how we roll. Let me admit, Graciela. It also is so important to have a supportive team. People that will give you a shoulder to cry on, people that will say, get back up there on the horse, people who would say, you were robbed, that's so unfair. So at any rate, having a team behind you, you want to come throughout your job search, you want to surround yourself with the most supportive, encouraging, I don't know, just the people that believe in you and will allow you to vent, and then finally say, okay, glad you got that out of your system. Now, what's your next step forward? Always helping you move in a forward direction, and they don't ever allow you to feel sorry for yourself, because it's unnecessary. That job wouldn't have worked out for you anyway. There's a better one ahead of you that's going to appreciate what you have to deliver. Also, never underestimate the power of internal candidates. This one not only looks like a superhero, but an angelic superhero. So how can you fight that? They're on the inside, they know everybody, they're familiar with the processes, and they become a very attractive candidate. It's like the person even if they perhaps are not as don't sound as promising as the person you don't know, but they're in your family, and you're gonna support them over the new guy. And the importance of trying to get as much inside information as you possibly can from people who are currently or in the past worked for this company in that department, regarding the culture and the politics and how the more positively you can present yourself for a job. All right, here's another person, meet PR. And I did not ask this person, some of you know this person, I didn't want to ask them to use their photographs. So this is the background of this person's LinkedIn profile. So years ago, he was very excited about a job opening that he had been told about by a friend on the inside of the company. I don't even know if the job was posted, but maybe it was. But because of this friend, he had had two really strong interviews already. They kept moving him forward. It all sounded really good. But the last interview, the final interview, was going to be a panel interview. And he was really nervous about this one. This was not a job title that he'd had before. It was a higher job title. So I think what he had been was maybe a software development project manager. So he was a software guy, and that this job was maybe, I can't remember exactly, was maybe more of a program manager position. So it was a little bit more strategic. It was more direct reports, and I don't know, it was a higher level though, with more money and more responsibility. And the day before, we used to have evening speakers once a month or twice a month, I can't remember, as a way for people who were working to stay engaged with Launchpad. And the night, his interview was scheduled for the day after we had an evening speaker. And so during, just before the evening speaker was supposed to talk, he said he was nervous about this interview. And he said, is there any chance that you could organize a mock interview for me tonight after the evening speaker to prepare for this job interview? And so I asked Launchpad people in the audience if anybody would be, I said, here's the company, here's the job, here's the situation. Do we have anybody out there who would be willing to serve on an interview panel from like 8 to 9 tonight following the speaker? And I was not surprised, but really impressed with the caliber of people that agreed to participate on his panel. So I was there to ask, HR questions, but these people had been in those roles, or even had worked for that company, or they were very familiar with the interview process. They were terrific. And one of them had even, he used to prepare little case studies about companies. And at the very end of the mock interview, he said, when he worked for 3M, that one of the case studies that he had done was on this company. And he said, so I do have some kind of backstory information if you think it would be useful. Well, yes, anytime you understand kind of the origin story of a company and why this spin-off company was created, what was the need, how did it all work, that kind of contextual information is really useful. So we put together this interview, and I think it lasted well past 10, and gave him lots of really good advice. For any of you who have interviewed for positions higher than you've ever had before, you need to understand that when you answer questions as if you were in your former role, they can't visualize you in the higher level role. So they would ask him questions sometimes, and he would answer them as if he were still the software guy, instead of the higher level person who was looking at the big picture and thinking more strategically. And so they were able to advise him on that. It was a really kind of transformational experience for him, and due to the generosity of the people who had volunteered. So he set out much more positive and encouraged about how he was going to do on that interview. But the outcome was that he was not selected. All my special effects are not working very well. Okay. So we were all kind of sad. Post-mortem. What worked was he felt that he had answered the technical questions very well. Of course, you would assume he would do that. He felt that he had connected with most of the interrogators, but not all. He seemed to impress them with his knowledge of the company backstory that he was able to integrate into his presentation. What didn't work was they gave him some sort of an in-basket exercise, which he had never, the recruiter or the HR person he was working with had not prepared him for that. He had never heard of an in-basket exercise. He didn't feel he had done very well in that. But it's an exercise that they very often give people who are going into senior management positions. There are lots of different versions. The version that I see most often is when somebody is given an in basket and they have to go through each piece of paper, each document that's in the in basket, and decide whether this is something that they would deal with themselves, whether it's something that they would delegate to someone else, in which case to whom would they give that assignment, if it's something they would ignore, if it's something they would just file, whatever. So it shows your ability to prioritize and to understand the organization and your decision-making process and so forth and so on. Anyway, he was kind of clueless about that. And there had been one interviewer who never seemed particularly impressed with the answers that he gave. But he had still felt that he had done well enough and that his background was solid enough that he had a good shot. So the lessons learned is don't make the same mistake twice. If you screwed up on an in-basket exercise, figure out how to master. I'm sure that they're all over the internet. There are things about how to do well on an in-basket exercise. Make sure to maintain relationships. Even if you don't get the job, always send a thank you email to the people that made it all happen in the first place. You worked very hard to create those relationships. You don't want to just throw them aside because you didn't get the job. So always be gracious and thank the interviewers, thank the recruiter who gave you information. If you have this inside contact, which he did, make sure that you are grateful to that person for giving you the information in the first place. If there's an admin person who set up the interview and made sure that everybody's scheduled and made sure that, everything happened according to schedule, then thank that person. Nobody thanks that person. And so you want to show gratitude and maintain a positive relationship, even if you did not get the job. Sometimes somebody who's offered a job reneges on the offer and they're looking around for somebody else, and here you are. So there are lots of reasons. And the other one was to research your weakest areas and make sure that you understand what in this role, what is the primary purpose of this position? What problem am I supposed to solve? What is this role supposed to do? And make sure that you have a very strong case for how you can do that. And the postscript to this is several months later, still looking for a job. He got called by somebody from San Jose, and this guy said, "You may not remember me." He was a VP from this company. And he said, "I happened to have been in town during your interview. And so I sat in on your interview panel. I was very impressed. I do believe they made the right choice on that job. I think the person they hired was better qualified, but they have another job open that I think is a perfect fit for you. And I hope you will apply for that one." And he did, and he got it. So there you go. Here's a new person, AR. This is the picture behind her LinkedIn photo. It has to do with her, it's appropriate for her job. So she found a job posting on LinkedIn. She has been working for a global tech company. If I told you the name of it, you would all know who it is. And she had been working for that company in a successive roles for 15 years, almost 15 years. And I think the last 9 years, she has even worked with the same team. Although when she started, in fact, that was one of her questions during one of her interviews was they said, you've worked with exactly the same team for 9 years. As if what, you're no longer able to be promoted. And she said, that's true. But when I started, I was the third person hired on that team. And we now have 45 people on that team and representing 39 different countries around the world. So all of our jobs have changed, morphed, grown dramatically with a great deal more responsibility and whatever. So she had a good answer for that. When she found this job on LinkedIn, that was essentially the same title as the job that she has currently, but it looked as though there was going to be a lot more responsibility. It was going to be a senior director, I think, a senior director of marketing in the retail and consumer goods channels. And they were looking for somebody who had worked for a software company and somebody with experience in both of those industry channels and somebody with really strong marketing background. She was a Baylor grad with a business degree with a marketing emphasis and had always worked in different aspects of the marketing world. And so then she looked up company and she discovered 6 people that she had worked with at company 1 were now working at company 2, including 2 senior VPs with whom she had really, really good relationship. So she immediately contacted all 6 of those people and ended up concentrating obviously on the 2 senior VPs, one of whom I had long conversations with her and gave her just great intel about what was going on inside the company, what were the a recent acquisition that was going to. So she had all of that background. Eventually, after she got to the finals, it said it was between, this guy told her that it was between just 2 people and that the other person had more marketing background, but had never worked for a software company. So she felt, since she had a strong marketing background and had worked for a software company, she was in a really good place. So you would think, wow, you've got 2 senior VPs that are recommending you. How can you lose, right? Altogether, she had 7 interviews. And the reason that she had one more interview than anybody else. And that's because one of her senior VPs was on one of her interview panels. And he told everybody that he had worked with her before and said, should I recuse myself? And they said, no, you need to be there because you were on everybody else's panel. And so you need to be on hers as well. But we'll throw in a 7th interview if she gets that far with somebody else, a different senior VP that she didn't know, who would have an unbiased evaluation. So that's why she had 7 interviews where the other person only had 6. And early on in the process, they told her she had to create a 20-minute presentation, and it had to cover, oh my God, it was horrible. It was a lot of, like, an entire marketing plan with naming a brand and pricing and different brand efforts in these 2 different industry channels. And so you couldn't go into a lot of detail, and the company wanted everybody to succeed. So once you got your presentation prepared, you had to meet with a coach who was going to look at your presentation and make sure you were in the right ballpark, so that if you were going down a dead end, you could correct your PowerPoint presentation before you just wasted everybody's time with having something that was not relevant. And she got really high marks for her presentation. So another good thing. And then I already told you about the rival. But how can this be? She was not selected. She, in her mind, she was already working there. In her mind, she was really looking forward to the team and the project to be so positive. And she was not selected. They chose the other candidate. And so, yeah, we're all crying. So what worked? She got kudos on her presentation. She actually, when the HR person called and told her that they had gone with somebody else, and she asked, what could I have done differently, or what was the problem? And the HR person said really that the two of them were so close. And she said, I cannot tell you a single mistake you made. I cannot tell you a single thing that you needed to improve. She said that it was really just came down to a personal choice. And I said, a personal choice, like the hiring manager chose the other person instead of you? And she said, yeah, apparently that was the case. And they needed somebody with an enormous breadth of experience, and she had all of that, whereas the other person did not. And she thought perhaps she had fallen a little bit there when she had her interview with the very last person. She, after the interview was over, she remembered something that she should have said. And she thought, I don't know if it's even appropriate for me to email her, an addendum to my answer, but she did. And she said, as soon as we closed our conversation, I thought of an additional da 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 da. And I just wanted to let you know that I also would have done this, or this was also a consideration, or whatever. And she never heard back from that person, so she didn't know if that might have been a problem or not. And she found out later that in the same way that she was recommended by the two senior VPs, the hiring manager already this had, I don't even know, had some kind of a background with this person, and the hiring manager's manager wanted this person. And so it's hard to fight that, even when you're a really good candidate. So lessons learned, she was really, really busy. She was really, really busy with her current job. It was a busy time, so she was working on a lot of projects with that. At the same time, she was trying to apply for a new job, and that was difficult. She also, right in the time when she was supposed to be creating her presentation, she developed a serious eye infection and could not even look at a screen because the brightness of the light was too hard on her eyes. So she got her presentation delayed by 3 days, trying to get over that. But there was that issue, and she's got a toddler. She's got a 9-month-old. So, her life is full. But it's always possible to do more research on what the company is going through, what their needs are, what what's going on in the industry sector, all the context that enable you to ask really intelligent questions and really come out as the person who already understands what's going on and can be easily visualized in that role. Also, when the hiring manager and their manager has a favored candidate, it is nearly impossible to win them over. Relationships matter. And what's interesting is when she called her two VPs to tell them that she had not gotten the job, one of them was really angry. And he said she was by far the better candidate. And he was really angry. And she said, look, I'm not. And she said, in the past, I have benefited from exactly that kind of favoritism. And she said, in fact, it's very likely that I would not have gotten this interview for this job if it hadn't been that you two put in a good word for me. And so I have, benefited from this political maneuvering myself. And I understand how how companies, how individuals want to work with people that they know and people that they've worked with before. So I completely understand. She wrote a very gracious thank you letter to the panel, everybody who had interviewed her, and just said, I understand how difficult it is to find candidates with the skills you're looking for and people who fit the culture and the team. And so I congratulate you on finding somebody who fits in all of those crucial ways or something like that. And anyway, there is a postscript to that. The senior VP, who was so upset, has said, I don't have an opening at this time, but as soon as I have an opening, I will be adding you to my team. So she is going to be the person who networks her way into the next good job that is at this company. And she's about to move. So I said, it's really better. Can you imagine relocating to another state at the same time that you're trying to start a new job? I can't, plus the toddler. So there you go. Things work out the way they're supposed to work out. They always say that, and I hate it, but it seems to be true. So the overall takeaway, what gets people hired? Sometimes it is the halo effect. And I think you probably all know what the halo effect is, but just to remind you that sometimes somebody will have one characteristic that is so impressive to the hiring people that they do not look beyond that. Somebody is so gall-darned gorgeous that they don't see the flaws, or somebody has graduated from an Ivy League school and they've never had anybody from an Ivy League school there before, and they think it would add so much cachet to their, to their organization if they could say that. And the person might not be nearly as capable as somebody from a state school. So there are things that that get people hired in spite of qualifications. Even it used to be that people who say, yeah, I worked at Dell for a long time, and man, little companies would say, oh, wow, Dell. Yeah, we'll hire you. It's the halo effect. I've heard many people say that they would hire somebody who really wanted the job, who was really enthusiastic, who said, this is the job that I've been looking for my whole life, or my entire, education has prepared me for this job. I can't wait to get started. This is the job I want. And they would say, I would much rather hire somebody with weaker skills, but more enthusiasm than the other way around. I can always train people on skills. I can't train somebody to care about a job, to care about my company. So enthusiasm sometimes gets somebody hired over other people. You might have a skill that nobody else has, and they need that skill. And so whatever, that's the company, the number one company that marketing person worked for. They just fired what was she? They fired a woman who was their chief information officer. And because the new COO, something, wanted to bring in her own person. And they needed this chief information officer to be bilingual, English, German. And I said, well, surely her person didn't have that skill. And he said, yes, he did. He was born in Germany, so he's completely bilingual and has all of the information, the communication skills. So sometimes you have a unique skill, it gets you a job in spite of things. But the inside relationship can take precedence over all the others. sometimes you just presented yourself in such an impressive way that you get the job. And that's what we would hope, that you get the job because your interview answers were great. Your presentations were terrific. You were the ideal candidate in so many ways. And because you were the ideal candidate, you got the job. That's how it's supposed to work. But anyway, sometimes even people who present themselves really well in an interview, answer all the questions correctly, when it gets to be the job, uh, they're not good. They don't have the work ethic or whatever, but they're great presenters. So uh, you can control almost all of those. You can definitely control your enthusiasm. You can make sure that you are continually adding to your skill set, so that if you don't have a unique skill, you might have a unique combination of skills that other people don't have. Definitely, you need to cultivate as many inside relationships with your target companies as you possibly can. And you can work on it and work on it until you have a close to flawless presentation and answer questions really effectively, because you're so skilled at this, at communicating your value to a prospective employer, because you've studied the employer and what they need, and you know what you give me a chance, and I can do this. I can solve this problem. I can lead you through the other side of this challenge. So it's that, are you able to communicate your value to an employer? Uh, the only thing that's not under your control is that halo effect. But there you go. So how do you acquire or develop these relationships? You've heard this 1,000 times from different webinars that talk to you about networking. But let me tell you that the very best, if you want to prioritize these things, former coworkers, former managers, reach out to people with whom you have worked, because they've worked with you. They've seen you on the job. They know you're smart. They know you get along with people. They know you show up on time. They know that you're responsible and reliable. So before you try to meet new people, make sure that you have contacted through LinkedIn, or if they're not on LinkedIn, some other way that you've reached out, especially to your former managers. Uh, and because those people are going to have a little bit more clout if they recommend you, or they reach out to managers that they know, or directors, as high as you can go, and those people to introduce you to other people or recommend you to other people. Um, but really cultivate, reignite, resurrect those relationships, and find people on LinkedIn and say, hey, remember us? We used to work together. If you come to the satellite class today, I'll show you how to use LinkedIn to find people with whom you used to work. If you remember their names, that's easy. If you don't remember their names, how to look those people up and connect with them. So that should be your highest priority. And then if you can find people that will introduce you to people within your target companies, and you can find those third-party people anywhere. So you can find them through people that you know, through work, or through organizations, or because they're neighbors. But if you can get somebody to introduce you to somebody at a company, so that they say, hey, this is a neighbor of mine, she's looking for a job, she's very interested in a position that you've got at your company, would you be willing to I'd like to introduce you, and see if you'd have time for a 15-minute conversation with her to tell her a little bit about the culture and so forth. So this friend has introduced you. So a warm handoff is also a really, really good way to do it. Anyways, there's that. Volunteers, so that you're interacting with new people, and try to volunteer with places where you're likely to meet. For example, if you volunteer for the 3M half marathon, because you really want to, I don't know if 3M even has a presence here anymore. They may not. Anyway, some kind of a volunteered thing. Oh, here's one. If you volunteer maybe for food, the food bank, you're helping people. Also, the food bank is highly subsidized by HEB, and there's the HEB Tech Center. And so it could be that there'll be HEB Tech Center people who are also volunteering there. And so whatever. Um, take classes, and don't just take classes and volunteer and go to webinars and sit there like a bump on a log. You need to engage. You need to talk to people. You need to never leave a class. You take a class, never leave a class unless you've been able to connect with all the people within that class, unless it's like hundreds of folks. But engage and connect and participate. If you come to the chat room, there are a few people that answer all the questions in chat room. And we've had in the past some people who were very actively engaged in offering suggestions to job search problems that people have. But if you're just a black rectangle with a name on it, why would anybody want to connect with you? They don't know you. They don't know how great you are. So you want to participate and stand out and help people see you as a human being. Also, when you put your LinkedIn contact information in our chat box, instead of just your LinkedIn contact information, some of you remember Woody, Robert Woodcock, who would also put his little elevator pitch in there so people would see, this is what he does. So put down the kind of work you're looking for as well. So other people that are in your same industry or whatever might want to reach out to you specifically and say, hey, you and I both have experience in the semiconductor world and we're looking for a job. Please connect. Maybe we can figure out ways to help each other. So put in what you're looking for as well. A really good way to acquire and develop relationships is to be a speaker at a related meeting. Some of you remember Pam Otten, who was a Launchpad member, and she's the one who created the T-chart method it's the trick that we teach as to how to get your resume up to 80% on JobScan and get it through an applicant tracking system and into the hands of a human being. And so I said, this is such a great trick. Why don't you be a speaker at Launchpad? And she did not want to be a speaker at Launchpad. I'll tell you that. She didn't feel she had the time. She didn't want to. She fought me on that. And she finally made the presentation and was very well received and provided really good information. And one of our people went right out and used her system and got a job as a vice president of a company, Jesus. And then she used that same speech or a portion of it and was a speaker at Product Camp and was served on a panel after that, a panel of experts. And then she wrote a book about the same thing. And so she gained all kinds of relationships as a spinoff from being a speaker at our little job club. So being a speaker at some sort of a meeting will give you lots and lots of connections and be something good that you can put on a resume and talk about in an interview. The same with starting a blog or a podcast where you interview people. Everybody's going to want to be on your little podcast, and we have people that would mentor you in starting that sort of thing. So you'll be able to connect with people that are influencers in your industry, perhaps. Tom Singer's advice while he was looking for a job was to talk to someone smarter than you are every day. And when you reach out to somebody and say, I'm currently on a campaign to talk to somebody smarter than I am every day, and I would like you are one of those people. I would like to set up a time to just have a real brief 15-minute conversation with you if I could, and have a bit of a conversation. And so it's a compliment to people. People are likely to do that. That is how he got his job. Robert Woodcock he heard that same advice and decided to do that. And one of the people that he talked to was a was a recruiter. The recruiter gave him some really good advice that he started to use in his interviews, and immediately, I don't know, a year or something like that, long time. Uh, Reach out to folks who are interesting. Reach out to new people that join Launchpad and say, I want to welcome you, and I'll be glad to answer questions or help you or mentor you and help you navigate your way through the local job search if you want. Let's meet for coffee, or if you don't want to meet, we can have a virtual coffee. Reach out and help other people. And I swear to you, it'll come back multifold. You'll meet interesting people. When they get jobs, they'll help you. It all comes back, but you have to engage. You cannot do this when you don't talk to people, when you don't engage, when you don't connect. And if you go through this job search and you still have exactly the same network that you did when you started, you have not taken advantage of this opportunity of unemployment to really dramatically increase your relationships. That's kind of what this is all about. All right. That's almost the end, but not quite. Post-mortem your job search. What's working in your job search and what's not working, and what are the lessons learned? You can post-mortem everything. So things that are not working, that don't seem to be working, do away with them for the moment and try something new. Lots of people, when things are not working, really kind of reinvent themselves. They'll redo their resume. They'll follow somebody's off the wall advice and try something completely new. Try something that terrifies you, like talking to somebody smarter than you every day, or volunteering to help out at a job club meeting. Volunteer with some of them. We've got 3 relatively big job clubs, and they're always looking for volunteers. Do a volunteer Leap to Success project. Volunteer with a cause that you believe in. Get active and just use this time. If you just 10 hours a day, concentrate on whatever, the same stuff that you've been doing for the last 6 months. It's time to make a massive change and get rid of what's not working and insert something else, a whole new approach to your job search.